We're going to start. You guys carry on. I have approved minutes of February 10th, 2011, but I actually have minutes from January 13th, 2011 here.
It should be January 13th.
We didn't meet on the 10th.
February 10th meeting was canceled.
That's what I thought. So I've got the minutes from the January 13th, 2011 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved and signed. We're going to move it at brisk pace because I have an agenda sitting here that says I have to be in another meeting at 4:45. Item 3, consideration of design options for the McEwen Drive at Wilson Pike Intersection Improvements Project. Mr. Gardner.
Okay. We're having presentation problems at the moment, so I guess as soon as the projectors are up, we'll pull up.
Well, we'll come back. We need to. I assume we need to.
Yes, you need
we
to
need
see
the technical.
You need to see it.
Item 4, discussion concerning the eastern flank battlefield access roadway status. Ms. Clayton.
That doesn't look like it's Clayton.
That's the better looking. I didn't say it. I tried.
It looks like you just came in from that.
Well, as you know, that we have city staff has brought forth the Eastern Flank Battlefield Park access road improvements before to you regarding the half loop, the full loop, doing this project in phases, and we also applied for a grant in 2010. And so, as we're going through budget currently, capital projects, of course, are on our mind as city staff, and how we need to move forward because we do have a large event that is going to take place within our community in the next few years. So it's very significant that this historical park still be on a priority list, not only for you all, but for us as well. So we're bringing that back to you this evening is the discussion as far as how staff should proceed with this road. Let me preface by saying we have been heavily involved with staff. It's not just a parks project anymore. It has been with planning, engineering, as well as with the Battlefield Commission, Preservation Commission. They've been heavily involved with the project and very much endorsed the entire road project because that was part of the master plan. We spent a lot of time going through a master plan. And so the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has set aside the $369,000, if that is correct, of within the CIP of last year. Of course, that funding will not be able to accomplish the full road that is proposed in the master plan. So we're at a crossroads, per se, no pun intended, of how we need to proceed. Do we need to wait on a grant in which we may know in around July of this year, whether we need to wait and do it then for design? The road project has not been designed as far as what surfacing and how it should look. And so those things are still in the air, and whether we wait on a grant or we move forward with the existing monies that we have allocated and work with the Preservation Battlefield Commission, work with city staff, and also work with, since the grant's in with the TDOT, because it's a transportation enhancement grant, how do we need to proceed? And so we're really looking for direction this evening. And David and Mr. Stuckey, if y'all want to add as far as staff level, and then Mike's here representing.
Well, the only thing I would add is that, as Lisa said, we have allocated $369,000 for the road. At the time it was being looked at, it was being discussed as just a half a road or the eastern portion to get you back to the Fleming Center, and also it would tie into your existing parking area that's out there now. The overall plan calls for that parking area to come out, et cetera. But $369,000 with the estimates that we have been able to get together for work will not even get you the road from Lewisburg Pike up to that area. It's not enough money to even do that. So we're kind of in a dilemma of need more money, wait on the grant. Of course, the grant is proposed for 1.2, I think, million dollars or something like that.
Correct.
We don't know if we're going to get it yet. Hopefully we do. And if we get the 1.2, then there would be enough funds to do at least the half loop, our portion, and some other improvements beyond just the road, I think, is included in the grant application. But anyway, that's where we are. As you'll recall, we had a proposal for engineering design back last summer, was it, Mike? I think it was last summer. As Mike, Mr. Skinner, excuse me, Alderman Skinner pointed out at the time, it was pretty high. But what we were, I guess, do we want to go forward, get a proposal for, since we have a better idea of what the road may be, get a proposal for getting the design done where we could get started. We don't know. We're kind of asking right now what you want us to do.
One of the other things to consider, I think we may get some word on the grant a little sooner, and that could be helpful to us in understanding what our options really are, especially if you get $1.2 million. That does kind of open up what you can really get done, and that we may want to check on that a little further, because I think that may be coming a little sooner than we thought in terms of some word one way or another. So that might affect a little bit of the need to have a whole lot of in-depth discussion tonight even on this. That's something we didn't know when we put this together, but I think we might be getting some word sooner on this.
So what is the cost? If it's not $369,000?
Well, just to get the roadway as a 22-foot double bituminous surface treatment with a gravel parking up from Lewisburg up to the Fleming, and like I said, it would tie into existing asphalt, is almost $700,000 construction.
Well, what will
estimate.
the 369 pay for?
It'll get us about,
get one
obviously,
lane.
about half of that.
Will it get a design?
Oh, yeah, we could do the design for that amount of money, yes. Oh, a lot less than that.
Yeah. We would be able to design, go ahead and move forward with design, as well as we were using that as part of our match for the grant process. Our match with that grant was $258,000,
Yes.
so we're well within those means.
I was going to say, how did we come up with that 369? Because maybe just refresh my mind a little bit.
That was a figure that I came up with after I had consulted with some people that they said if we did design build, there could be significant savings. And then the city attorney told us that design build was not an option. This would have also included some significant contributions.
In-kind kind of work.
In-kind kind of work.
Well, we can't do anything until we have a design.
Well, let's remember we've got a grant out there for $1.2 million that we haven't heard yet.
I understand that.
So we discussed this morning in the Battlefield Commission meeting, and they are in favor of waiting to hear if we hear from the grant, yes or no, and then proceeding with that. Because if we don't get the grant, we're not sure that we're going to go with this current design. Okay, if we get
So let's don't design something that we might fail on.
Exactly, right, exactly.
Fine.
Let's move on.
Next.
So, all right, so wait till the grant.
It's much more delayed than we might need to have another conversation, but it seems like we may find out sooner, so let's hold off on that.
Back to item 3, thank you. Back to item 3, consideration of design options for the McEwen Drive at Wilson Pike Intersection Improvements Project.
I've got Sammy McCoy with Kleiner Engineering here also. We give you a little history on this project. The existing bridge built out over the railroad at McEwen and Wilson Pike is 20 years old plus, and this is all part of the new school out in the Breezeway area. As you all remember, the city and county made an agreement. County contributed $1 million to road improvements. City hired Kleiner Engineering to do the design of the Wilson Pike and McEwen intersection. Part of their scope, they were to present or to give the city a few options to look at that intersection. Staff has been working with them. We've come up with 4 options and wanted to bring it to the committee tonight. The first option was really kind of the option that when when this was first requested staff to look at, this was kind of what I used to come up with the cost estimate. And if you remember, we talked about the cost estimate roughly around $2 million. And that was pretty rough numbers. Sammy has been able to kind of refine that. This is leaving the existing bridge and then building a new bridge beside it. And you can see the breakdown of their costs, about $1.8 million. And this is, like I said, it's a new bridge beside it. Some of the pros and cons of this option. Pro, that you can still move traffic. It's not going to be a major interruption to traffic because you're building beside it, and the cost is within the $2 million that we had talked about. Some of the cons on this, you've got a major cost. Let me jump back to that. You can see at the bottom of the cost estimate, $208,000 for a roadway flagger. That is a cost that we have to pay CSX. Whenever we do work in the right of way, they require that a flagger is present. What's bad about this option, we'd have to do that more than once because this is not ultimately what this intersection is going to look like. We'd have to come back at a future date, widen it out, and we'd have to pay that money again, whether that's $208,000 again, it maybe more, maybe something different, we don't know. There's another issue that with two separate bridges, you've got, and let me go back again to your typical section down at the bottom. You've got the bridge rail right here. We'd have to build a guardrail off of that for safety purposes. Because of the proximity of the bridge to Wilson Pike, it presents a challenge. It's a little more hazardous, and so it's another reason why this option, or one of the cons of this option. It's if you ever go out there, right now it's very tight turning radii. If you look at the guardrail in every direction out there, they've been dinged multiple times. So very tight movements out there. Option 2, this is the plan view of that, and really you probably can't see too much on this, but it's just like I said before, it's keeping the existing bridge, building off of it, doing the turn lane on Wilson Pike like was talked about before. Option 2 kind of expanded off of that option, and instead of having two separate bridges, we would build off the existing bridge and make it one bridge. Once again, the cost is about the same. It's a little bit less this time, 1.72 instead of 1.79, and still have some of the same costs associated with it. Some of the pros are the same with this. You still have the good traffic control because there's room to build the bridge and still keep traffic moving on the existing bridge, still within our $2 million cost estimate. And then probably the big difference between this one and the first option is now that you don't have that rail in the middle, you don't have that hazard and the difficulty of the guardrail there. And then here's your same kind of view. The only difference is, if you could really see it, is it's one bridge rather than two bridges. So we got to talking and thinking about really how it's going to be in the future ultimately. As we've discussed with the CIP process, there has been some talk that the Phase 4 of McEwen, which would be from Cool Springs over to Wilson Pike, some have shown an interest in that, making that a higher priority. The extension east of Wilson Pike is also somewhat of a priority because we've had an agreement with Brentwood to do that project. So we wanted to look at really looking at this, how it's going to be in the future. And so we looked at how Wilson Pike is actually going to be aligned in the future. And really, if I jump ahead to that plan view, we shifted Wilson Pike over to where it would ultimately be in the future, getting a little bit farther away from the CSX intersection, and like I said, looking at it how it's going to be long term. Obviously, when you shift it over like that, there's more costs associated, more asphalt on Wilson Pike, more right-of-way definitely. And so this option, the estimated cost on it is $3.2 million. This, it's a pretty big jump to this new cost. Pros and cons on this. It's a pretty good section. Depending on how soon the improvements to Wilson Pike and McEwen are done, this gets us what we need for a pretty good while. As bullet point 1 is, it gets us that interim traffic movement. It's some of the good things about option 2 where you don't have that median rail to worry about, and you don't have to worry about going back on Wilson Pike in the future and getting additional right of way. It takes that into consideration right now, and it allows the future mast arms when this intersection is ultimately signalized to be constructed sooner rather than later. If you remember from earlier talks, the county's going to come in with the span wire on the poles rather than the mast arms that we typically go with. Big con on this, it's a more expensive option.
Eric,
yes?
As we contemplate these things, if we did option 1 or 2, you said that, in the future, the intersection will look like this. If we picked option 1 or 2, how far out is, quote, the future, close quote? In other words, if we do the $1.7 million projects, either one of them, how much time are we anticipating elapses between the first round of projects and the next round?
Right now, there is no funding set aside for option or for phase 4 of McEwen. So a lot of it depends on
even
which.
On the CIP?
Yes, it's on the CIP.
It's a top 10 project. It's just not funded at this
Exactly.
point.
Okay.
So
it's a wish list.
Yeah. But if you guys came back to us the next time it was voted on, you said you want to get this going, and that would really make a huge difference between what option we would ultimately want to go with and what you guys would want to go with.
Well, at option 7, what's the total cost? At priority 7, what's the total cost of priorities 1 through 6? And what does that tell us about when we might be able to budget for number 7? Because I acknowledge it's a priority. However, it's number 7.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get to go to number 1 or number 3 just because it might be more expensive to do it in steps, in my view.
Right.
So if we take priorities 1 through 6, what's our funding timeline? If we just go through the natural order of business, when do we get to 7?
And that's hard to answer. Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got a couple big projects that are right around the same priority level. South Carruthers Extension, McEwen 4 are both in that same range. I think South Carruthers is slightly higher rated priority.
Right now.
So and they're both in that same cost range. They're both big projects.
I mean, I think it should be clear. The reason that I ask is because while I appreciate being told that there's an opportunity to combine some things and avoid some redundant costs, flagmen and that kind of thing, and avoid relocating utilities and that kind of, I appreciate being told that. However, it's priority number 7. 1 through 6 aren't even funded, right? Well,
We've
1
funded
is
the top 4, well, 4 of that in that group.
Okay, but
The way we haven't borrowed the money for all.
All but Hillsborough Road. You've borrowed about half of Hillsborough Road.
which I should not have to remind anyone is priority number
2? Well, it's 1 with the new group. There are other ones that are already funded by previous priorities, yes.
What I'm getting at is, I appreciate being told that there are redundant expenses potentially, but you're talking about nearly doubling the cost of the project, or doubling it, to prevent that, but it's priority number 7, and we haven't funded that far out, and the difference between doing option 1 or 2 now and delaying picking the rest of it up might be many years.
Well, and I'll just say, when I was asked to come up with a cost estimate, and when we were first asked to look at it, I did the bare bones, the minimum, with that thinking in mind.
Well, as I said, I appreciate being given the choices, because I like menus and not, here's what you get.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to balance the priorities that we've collectively decided upon, and to me, I see several $100,000 of potential redundant costs, but that's not, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't cause me to want to skip over 1 through 6.
If we could hear from the ward, is that your ward?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're ready. We've got to do this intersection. It's part of this agreement, at the school. And we have some other things that have come into play. First of all, one of the top 3 is finished, funded and done. Phase 3 of McEwen is already funded.
It's underway.
And it's underway. So that leaves Hillsborough. So those 3 over here. So 4, 5, 6, and 7, if you just move them up, according to, are the next ones. Okay? So the next one, so that would be McEwen Phase 4 would actually be number 4 now on the list. But we're going to look at CIPs, and we're going to reprioritize, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to see where the needs are. Now, South Carruthers is basically shovel-ready, if you want to use that term. We've got the design done, we've got the right-of-way done, and, I think when we take a look at our priorities, that's certainly ready to go. So that makes a lot of sense. As a Ward 1 alderman, I've got to push Phase 4 because Phase 4 has been lacking for years, and we have, I like the fact that McEwen or South Carruthers is ready to go, and we need to really seriously put that out there as well as one of our top priorities. But if we look at Phase 4, we've inherited that. We've had the whole Ashton Park area built. We've got the new Avalon built. We've got McKay's Mill, but the eastern part of McKay's all built out. And then we had Avalon on top of the hill. Then we have Mead of Avalon. And then we had Breezeway. All that was allowed to be approved and built and everything without addressing that road. Seriously, huge problem that we never did that in the past. We all sit here and we have inherited that. We have that on our plate. So now the school system comes to us and they want to put a school over there. That even creates more traffic, more buses in that dense area. Okay. Now we've also got the rezoning of the schools that happened. And they've taken the Mead of Avalon, which is down there on the corner of McEwen and Wilson, and now they don't come out and take a left and get on Wilson and go up a half a mile to Ravenwood. They come out, they take a right, and they go down all of McEwen, and then they'll hopefully get on the new section of McEwen. They'll be going to Centennial. So now not only do we have additional traffic from the new school, we're going to have additional traffic from the Breezeway people and the people over in the county and the Mead of Avalon all coming this way on McEwen. So we have that to think about as well when we're reprioritizing. So I just want to give you that information, make sure we're thinking in those directions, and whatever option we end up choosing, of course, we need to choose something that's going to make sense, that when that road gets done, it's not going to create more problems for us than we need to have out there, and also to be good stewards with our money in that intersection, where it's going to tie into the new road. And when we're looking at our CIP, we need to consider all these things that are happening out there, which 2 new things have just happened recently, to add more traffic on that road. And it'll be interesting to do traffic studies when the schools open in the fall, because we're not only going to have Breezeway, we're going to have all the Centennial traffic too.
So what are you saying? Are you saying we need to, which one of these options?
Well,
There's one more to talk
There's
about.
yeah, I'm not saying any of them. I'm here to listen and to observe like you are and to take it all in. And then we all need to discuss, and I don't want to jump in here, but
Let's see
What's the next option?
Let's see 4.
absolutely.
4 is just a slight bit more expensive, $5 million compared to 3.2. What this is, it's a bigger bridge. It gets you all your lanes on this option, whereas you don't ever have to come back out there and add additional lanes. And what's good about this, you do take away all those additional costs. One cost that we didn't talk about, there is a force main out there, our force main that would have to be relocated. So force main relocation, the flagger, those type of costs, that's the whole reason why we're looking at this, is because it does save us some money in the future if the improvements to Wilson Pike, if the improvements to Phase 4 or the extension of McEwen came along fairly quickly. So that's what we looked at. Once again, the biggest con on this one, it's a lot more expensive. And when we put it all together, planning for the future, we felt like this was the one to recommend, because yes, it is a little bit more, but we also just saved $3 million out of the budget on McEwen Phase 3, and thought maybe that would be a possibility of using part of that money for this. And then this is just the plan view of it. Once again, it gets it away from CSX a little bit further. It makes it a much better intersection. I would say if you weren't going to do Phase 4, the Eastern Extension and Wilson Pike anytime soon, I would not recommend this. Because I think it would be a waste of the additional money. But if you're considering doing any of those projects sooner, that's why we would recommend
So
it.
option 4 only makes sense if we're also going to accelerate Phase 4.
If you're going to do any of those in the next 5, 6, 7 years, then
Okay.
yes.
Does funding Phase 4 and thus making option 4 the recommendation, does doing both of those things, just either do both or you don't do option 4, does doing both of those things jeopardize funding for any higher priority projects?
Not if you use that. I mean, right now, the additional savings from Phase 3, you could use that, and I don't know that it would have any effect on anything else.
If you're saying doing Phase 4, if you do McEwen Phase 4, absolutely. It absolutely does.
Option 4, you mean?
No,
If you
Phase
do
4.
McEwen Phase 4, the magnitude of that project, you cannot do in your funding capacity South Carruthers in the near future. What we're looking at...
I'm interested in South Carruthers.
I'm
However,
interested in South Carruthers.
it is not priority number 1.
It doesn't affect priority number 1, if that's your question, because priority 1, 2, 3, and 5 have been funded in your funding plan, and we see those as projects you've committed to. The bid, we haven't bid all of them, but they've been, those are looked at as committed projects. In terms of the update of the plan and what the funding capacity is, if you look at the capacity that you established And we've had some savings, project savings. We've had some savings in terms of the cost to borrow has been less than the projected.
Then, is there some kind of Venn diagram you can give me that tells me it's an either-or between this and this? Like, because here's what I'm hearing. You only do option 4 if you accelerate phase 4 in funding. And if you do phase 4, you have, by selecting it, eliminated, or at least for the time being,
Just slow down.
South Carruthers and maybe others.
Right. And one of the things we're looking at as we are looking at the update of the priorities and the plan, and what we're going to give you to work from the staff standpoint, is what are our options to bite off smaller pieces of what has been called McEwen 4 and what has been called South Carruthers. What are their options to do so that those aren't in and of themselves such huge projects? Are there opportunities to break those up into smaller pieces? South Carruthers is designed so it's closer to being able to move forward in segments. McEwen 4 has not had design completed yet. So we kind of need to do that, I think, before we can fully break out how that might be put into maybe more manageable chunks. And that's going to be a piece of what I think we need to look at going forward.
So are we putting the cart before the horse tonight? Don't we need to do that first?
I think we need to know where that lands on your overall priorities before we make this kind of commitment.
You probably do, but keep in mind, we do have a time frame that we have to get this intersection done by 2. So we're we push this forward to try to get this presentation where you can see what's going on, but then we've also had somewhat of a delay in our new prioritization due to different reasons, but we're getting close to presenting that to you. So, but I really don't think we could ask for. I mean, we'd love for you to say do it this way, but I don't know that you're ready tonight to even make informed.
No, I need what I would like.
But we need to keep this. Thinking about this for the next month or so, and as we go forward with the prioritization.
What I would recommend is put this item on the next work session, and at that time, give us if you pick this bundle, and if you pick that bundle, well, these things, phase 4 and option 4 go together.
Well, yes.
I mean, they don't have to, but
there's a logical connection if you're going to go there.
I got to tell you, too, do not forget McEwen Drive, east of Wilson Pike. We have an agreement with Brentwood that we have to do something.
I understand, but we could pick option 1, and we could.
But what is proposed here, as far as the options, also play into what you may end up building or throwing away when you do that next phase or extension.
Well, that's all the more reason that what I would like to see.
There's actually 3 different projects here you're kind of considering, intersection and then 2 phases.
All right, well, then that's all the more reason that what I would like to see is some kind of matrix where you tell me, if you pick these things, the priority on the CIP is this, and if you pick this, then it only makes sense to also bundle this in. And if you do that, your funding allocation now suggests that this item must wait or be scaled back to something more like this. Because this is an important project. South Carruthers is an important project. I mean, and this is why we get paid the big bucks to make these difficult decisions. But I need to kind of understand the connection between the logical connection between bundling up some of these things and what ramifications those decisions have on. Then, if you do this, great, but you can't then do this in this time frame.
What I think we'll be able to provide you here shortly is a staff recommendation in terms of an overall, what priorities fit into the funding plan, what things make sense to look at from a staff recommendation. Along with that, there's sort of a consensus staff recommendation. We also had individual department leaders that work in certain areas like parks and roads and streets give you their specific priorities within their groups, their area of expertise. So you can kind of see it sliced a couple different ways in terms of staff view of prioritization as a whole, and then within specific categories of capital. So hopefully that will help facilitate your discussion, look at prioritization. We're also framing it in the context of where are we relative to our funding plan, what has changed, and how does, especially the recommendation that I think we'll provide you as our overview or kind of consensus from staff, how does that fit in? Because we've really tried to govern ours as well by that prioritization along with the funding capacity. So you'll see that. We're working through the final pieces of that, and you'll see that here in the next couple weeks. Right? And then that will be something that will lead into
Mr.
your
Skinner,
discussion.
and we've got 10 minutes to do 12, 14 more. Most of them are consideration of contracts, but
Just on these options, one thing, I think on the previous three, it said that sewer force main would have to be relocated. And on the fourth, it wouldn't. What would our estimates be on the relocation of sewer main?
I can't answer that myself right now, but we
We
can
need that as part of the project.
we'll get that. I'm sure there's a number somewhere, I just don't
I mean,
know.
100,000, I mean, you're talking $100,000.
to relocate the sewer main if we did it.
Again, because it's strapped onto the bridge, and it's always going to have to be on the outside, so that, since you can't get underneath on the tracks to access it, you've always got to keep it moved to the outside of the new bridge.
Okay, Alderman Peterson.
Okay, very quickly, as I understand it, we have the money from the school board and from the facilities tax that the city has kind of for the county. It hasn't been a part of our facilities tax. We have the money to pay for option 1 or option 2. So therefore, this didn't have to be in our priority rank because of that. Whenever you look at it in terms of priorities, we're just talking about, we save money, but we've already talked about using some of that saved money. I think we need to be looking at the saved money because we cannot count, as we saw on, the nickel meal, that things will come under the projection, because that came in, considerably over the projection. It was going to be a little $300,000 or something like that, and it's turned out to be several times that much. So please kind of keep that in mind, too.
Okay. Are we clear on what we need?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
That was item 3. We got on to 5. Discussion concerning the Hollinsdale Barn construction renovation documents and proceeding with the repairs.
Mr. Chairman, basically with this item, you have 3 different items within it. You've got a professional service agreement that we're bringing before you this evening. You have a grant, and you also have a preservation covenant. Those are the 3 items. The reason we're bringing this before you this evening is in May of 2007, when we were doing construction at Harlinsdale, the board at that time moved forward to have a structural analysis complete on the barn. Because we knew that at some point in time we would have to do some roof repairs. But during the May flood in 2010, it received heavy damage due to the rain and the winds. Plus, we had approximately half a foot of water that actually entered the facility. So with FEMA's representatives on site, Risk Management, TML, and we also requested through FEMA, through their contacts with the State Historical Commission, in August of 2010, we were awarded for construction only to replace the gutter and roof replacement of $38,500. Because of our prior knowledge of knowing with the structural analysis, we cannot replace the roof on this facility without doing some type of structural repairs. FEMA has said they would not pay for those repairs because it was not damaged by the flood. So we would have to pay for those repairs prior to receiving the funding and construction for the gutters and the roof. With staying in compliance with with our procurement process and FEMA's regulations, we met with city administration and requested then the assistance of Brad Wilson to get involved in this project, because then not only do we need to kind of take a look at this facility, but because there's so many other things with this facility that needs to be done, maybe full design needs to be completed. And so we pulled the master plan back out and looked at a full design. We sent out an RFP, a request for proposal. 6 firms were submitted in December of 2010. Oversight, in which you have that proposal for you tonight, was selected by city staff based on their proposal and the overview of the project. With looking at this, there are 3 phases because of the funding issue. Phase 1 and 2 would have to be completed prior to us doing construction for the roof project. There is a phase 3 in order for us to then be able to bring back to the board, basically put in a capital projects plan so that we would know what construction and how to be able to utilize that facility. The city staff approached the Tennessee Historical Commission in January of 2011, requested through a grant, and it was a small grant at the time, but they have come back to us with the $25,000 that we've received, if you recommend that this evening, to go toward phase 1 and 2 design of the facility. So in saying that, the phase 1 and 2 of the facility is $73,350. With it being $25,000 from that, you're looking at around $48,350 that the city would have to pay for the design. We have met with Rush Trueiler Finance and took a look at the hotel motel, because this is where this particular facility would be paid for, and we do have the existing funds currently within this fiscal year's budget if you decide to move forward with that. So it would not be out of the general fund, but hotel motel tax. And that is how we would propose out of the parks budget for the 2012 fiscal year is the 3rd phase of this project, out of hotel motel tax in the fund. So you basically 2 fiscal years to pay for the full design. Then we would bring back a budget with you as far as construction of how we need to move forward.
Does this total figure include the roof? Did I hear you correctly? It does not include the roof?
The design and everything would include the roof. It would include the roof and what other items would need to be completed in order to receive the funding from FEMA. Yes, ma'am.
It would include designing the roof.
It would design and the structural part. It's the structural.
I have a question. I don't want to sound peevish. However, you're talking about $75,000 to design barn repairs. I can only imagine what that must suggest about the cost of the repairs themselves. At what point do we say it's a barn? If we like the barn that much, AutoCAD it, tear it down, and build a new one.
With it being a historical and on the registry, that's not an option for the city of Franklin.
The barn itself
The barn itself is on.
It will cost to actually do the work. Because usually the design is like 10 to a maximum of 20% of the project. Yep. So if you're talking about...
I mean, you're talking about a $500,000 barn repair.
Well, what we're looking at, and I don't know if you can...
Just extrapolating the design.
Can you pull up those slides, Sarah, please? Go to the very last one that's got the plan on it. Well, Lisa and I had a conversation back in the fall when she approached me about looking at putting a roof on the structure. It was just to put a roof on the structure. She had some dollars to do that. I took the point of kind of stepping back to say, what would it cost us to look at doing what we would need to do to the barn for down the road occupancy? We came up with a decision, Lisa and I did, in conversation, that one, it would never hold animals again. There would never be stalled animals in there again. So let's look at maybe a design process to use it that not only the city but the surrounding community could use. So just quickly, I know we're very on time, but just real quickly, what we're doing is we're looking at basically keeping the people that are familiar with the barn as you enter the left side as it is, but on the right side, basically creating a large gathering area. The 2 offices, the original lounge, the ladies' lounge on the front, would be restored back to their original back in the late 40s to 50s. As you walk into the main complex of the facility, as you go to your left, there's 4 stalls that are down at the very end that we had decided would be used kind of as historical spots and some history about the horses that were stalled. and some of the story of Harlansdale would be used as a historical area in that revamped stall area. Then what we looked at trying to do is for use and try to create some funds back for the Parks Department, was to possibly create some breakout rooms in the other 4 stalls, 2 on each side of each other, which could be used for any type of meetings or functions that might be appropriate to the Parks Department. But in that, we also know that we had to create some men's and women's bathrooms, and we're using one of the old jockey rooms in the very back left-hand corner and a stall to create men's and women's restrooms. On the other side was the veterinary clinic that they had on site. We're looking at using the old vet area and one of the stalls there to create a prep kitchen for any type of function, historical, parties, weddings, anything that could be possibly used. And then the large area, basically taking out those 8 stalls and creating a large open gathering space that would have possibility for tables or chairs to be brought in, that, again, that y'all might want to lease to folks to try to make funds back for the Parks Department. So that, we kind of took another approach instead of just looking at butterfly, putting a butterfly stitch on the roof and just putting a roof on it, which was about, some of the quotes that I had ran between $14,000 to $18,000 to come in there and put a single layer of roofing on it, just to get it dried in. That was when I asked Lisa, do we want to maybe look at and bring to the board the option of getting designed to do a facility like this prior to us making that final decision? Do we just want to butterfly it? Because there are problems with the barn. We're going to possibly lose the home that's out there because it needs a roof on it as well. But the barn we are trying to save to try to get it completely dried in. There's some other slides, but not to get through the time right now. They're showing rot to the siding and the windows.
Do we have any idea of the cost magnitude that was referenced before that? Do we have that kind of number?
For the construction of the facility? I wished I had. I don't. I do not.
So that may be a pretty critical piece.
And it could be. Again, it was just trying to get some preliminary work on this to go ahead and get the architectural portion of it to get us up to get the outside completely renovated, get the new windows, get new doors installed, get the roof installed, get some of the preliminary interior structural work, get the interior structural work done, which is from stabilizing the foundations up through the framework.
Okay. Again, this is one of those scenarios where I feel like I ought to tell you I appreciate the options that you're creating for us. Mm-hmm. I for one don't see $500,000 or $750,000 to turn the barn into a banquet facility coming out of our budget anytime soon. That's me. But that said, I want this structure to be, sound. So, I mean, to me, the roof and replacing, damage like that, I think that we
It will still cause some design work from meeting with FEMA, but also with our building neighborhood services, and I mean everybody on staff, engineers have gone on site. The structural analysis of this barn, we cannot just put shingles back on the barn. There are some work that has to be completed, and so therefore we can't do that without stamped designs within the city, and that's kind of where our hands are a little bit tied.
My thought would be more: are there organizations out there? Are there in kind? I don't know. Are there? I mean, I know we have a $25,000 grant from Tennessee Historic Commission, but within our community, is there something that can be done more on a donation type because of that?
I don't know if there are. I don't know if we could take a little more time to look at the option of the grant. Do we have a timing issue on the grant?
The grant has to be used by September, okay. And so it has an April 15th deadline on it if we want to recommend moving forward with the grant.
The $25,000.
The $25,000, correct. And then the FEMA money, we have to, in order to use that money, we also then have to have some type of work done prior to the roof. So we would lose the $38,500 by December of this year.
So FEMA is $38,500 and the grant is
$25,000, correct.
All right. Good discussion.
Thank you.
Pastorelli, you seem to want to say something.
Well, like my wife says, I'm a master of unsolicited advice.
And it's worth what we're going to pay for it.
That's right. Exactly right. It won't be worth the time. My nephew got married this past fall, and they had a heck of a time finding a place. And I just, as I look at this, it just sort of comes to my mind that there are so few places in Williamson County that people can rent out for large events. I look at the barn that they built for Loveless Cafe, and I don't know how often it's occupied, but I know it's been pretty successful. And is there a way to encourage private investment into this and not to spend city dollars? Is there a group that would want to come in and say, hey, we'll pay to fix this thing up, get it back to historical standards, but we get a 10-year lease to run it as an event hall? Just, like I said, for what little that's worth.
In talking with Lisa, the phase one portion does do the roof and the real structural, the key components.
That's 73,000?
I'm wondering if we can keep.
Here's what I'd like.
Focused on phase one.
This is me. Okay, obviously just me saying this. I want you to do what needs to be done to keep it from deteriorating and decaying. Beyond that, I fear that expensive designs will lead to beautiful color, watercolor renderings that we are not going to be in a position to do anytime soon, and that they will then go stale. We just decided that we're going to have to wait and see if money falls out of the sky to do anything at Eastern Flank. Okay? I don't want to have a beautiful watercolor rendering with poster boards and things to put on easels that would be beautiful if only we had $500,000 or $750,000 to do. I think what's important to do at this point is authorize the steps that are necessary to prevent further decay and to correct existing damage and decay. Dry it in, get siding on it, not siding, but replace,
whatever it needs.
take care of the physical structure so that when and if we have some more choices, that we haven't let things slide. Fix the roof, fix the structural problems, and if you need a design to do that, I guess you do. I'm kind of simple, so I'm still stuck on it's a barn. How hard can it be? I mean, they didn't have $70,000 worth of blueprints when they built it.
One of the things, Alderman, and you bring up some good points, and it's not something that city staff has not been dealing with for several years with this particular facilities. But in order for the general public to use this facility at all, it has to be brought to code. And so it will be locked up and will just be a structure on site until that can be done. And that takes this type of proposal that we brought forth today just to see what all of that would be and to be able to bring construction costs, true construction. So thank you for your
Phase
time.
one will not allow us to go into the barn. Phase one. Okay.
But phase one does put a roof on.
Well, phase one
and two.
Phase one.
Because of the structural part, we've got to
It
do
gets you a
the structure.
design.
To get you a design.
It doesn't put the roof on. It gets you a design.
Okay, just to be clear, while I appreciate I had this conversation with Mr. Scalf, who's the chairman of the Sustainability Committee. Just so it's clear, I view staff's job and sustainability and all. I view their responsibility as to dream big. Okay, I want staff and the people that are on these committees to come to us with their best ideas, some of which the board is going to have to say no to. That doesn't mean we didn't value the thought or the idea or the effort. Okay.
We understand.
So,
Thank you.
that said, do you need action on
I want to ask a question.
Ms. Martin?
Phase one is what? Design?
Phase one and phase two are kind of tied into the same. Depends on how far we want to go to it.
Okay, design and roof and structure.
Just architectural drawings that would get us up to structural drawings for structural repairs, exterior notes on what the repairs need to be to the outside of the facility, foundation repair drawings, basically everything except where he's got included here, and I'm looking at this, where he has included some architectural in there probably for the rough-in type drawings for any plumbing, fire sprinkler systems, anything like that, electrical systems within the structure. That would be done and then would be finalized, or as the trim-out stage, in the third phase of the architectural drawing.
Where's the roof? Phase 1 or 2?
No, not there.
Not
Or
there.
3?
Well, what this does is get the structural design that you need to be able to repair the roof. That's
What we were trying to do.
But there's a
And
difference
other-
between
Yes, ma'am.
design and actually fixing the structure.
But you can't, the problem you have is that you have rotting elements, et cetera, and you cannot put a roof on there until you fix the structure, basically.
Where
is
does
what it boils down
where
to.
does the fixing come in?
It's
Phase
Another day.
Another day.
This sets the stage to be able to do that.
just keep in mind.
I don't know whether it's phase 1 or phase 2. Here's what I, for one, would like to see you do. Go get whatever plan you need to dry it in and know what repairs need to be made, that we could open it to the public even in a rudimentary kind of, here's what the barn actually looked like, more or less, in use. I don't think we're going to be able to fund, I could be wrong, but I don't think we're going to be able to fund anytime soon something that would make it a party hall. But I'm willing to do something to get it open to the public, to know what needs to be done, to open it to the public as part of our park. That I would like to see. That I will try to find a way to do. And I don't know whether that's phase 1, phase 2, or some hybrid.
I think we go back to the drawing board a little bit, and we
Yeah.
start having that conversation.
I mean, again, I appreciate your ambition, but we're taking things off the table, and I mean, it's
We just want,
Hotel, motel dollars are going to be requested from a lot of folks.
Correct.
yeah, we just wanted to bring it to you because I hated to look at trying to get a Band-Aid on it if we could at least look at it. So we've talked about it today, and we'll talk about it one more time, and then we'll decide if we need to just do the Band-Aid.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6, consideration of the award of construction contract for the pedestrian signal at Carruthers Parkway at Bakers Bridge Road project to Stansell Electric Company in the amount of $87,827.
Staff is recommending rejection of the bids, and
Done.
we'll be working on stuff.
7, consideration of the award of the construction contract for Jackson Lake dredging project to Century Construction Company, Inc. in the amount of $1,467,785.
We've received bids. This original estimate for this was somewhere around $1.8 million. This is a project that's been ongoing for a couple of years on trying to get some things done for our lakes around the city. So we recommend approval of the contract.
Is it in our budget?
It
in your storm-
It is in stormwater.
Budgeted in stormwater.
It was budgeted at 1.8.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Motion to recommend to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Number 8, construction of the professional services agreement with CDM for the construction administration services. What would the contract be? Construction administration service for Jackson Lake dredging project in the amount not to exceed $63,000.
This goes along with that, the project. It will meet within the budget.
Motion to recommend approval to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Skinner got his hand up.
Mr. Skinner.
It's a dredging project. What is it we get for $63,000 for a dredging project?
Part of this contract is, we hope, will not be needed to be paid for because we hope that the street department inspectors will be able to handle most of it. This is somewhat of a, if needed, but we're definitely getting shop drawing reviews and things like that. It's more than just a dredging. There is a box culvert that's being constructed, which is pretty significant. There's shop drawings that are involved with that. So it's assistance that we would typically get on a project because we do not have enough staff to be able to cover all the tasks.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Number 9, consideration of the amendment to the master services agreement with CEC for stream restoration projects in an amount not to exceed $42,400.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't have a problem, we can take 9, 10, and 11. They are different firms, but they're all amendments to professional services agreements
Let's do that
for doing
then.
stream restoration
We'll be-
projects.
We'll take up for discussion 9, 10, 11.
9 is for, with CEC for, I can't even remember the creek now.
It's
Sorry.
at Buckingham.
Buckingham, it's the, we don't have a good name for it. We call it Ralston Creek, the map calls it North Ewanville, but it's the stream that goes through Buckingham. 10 is with,
The next time I'm on a city alderman position, it's going to be in a city with no rivers, lakes, streams, or floods.
All roads.
Or roads or sewers. It's going to be vast expanse of nothing. No septic tanks.
Go to the desert.
Yep.
so you're not going to be on the city council. But anyway, the number 10 is with URS. It is for the Green Branch Stream Restoration. That is in Maplewood. Then the last one is with AMAC, which is a stream restoration design project. This is the stream behind Victoria Court. It's east of Jordan Road.
Oh, Royal Oak.
It's in Royal Oaks. It's that, and it goes behind Victoria Court, at the end of Victoria Court, between Jordan Road and there.
So you want a motion?
Yeah, I think one motion on all three.
I move, so moved that we accept this.
We recommend approval of these items to the full board.
Thank you.
That's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Number 12, consideration of TDOT utility relocation contract for water for the McHatcher Parkway Northeast Quadrant widening project from State Route 96 to State Route 6. Mr. Parker?
Tuesday night, we looked at the design contract for doing this water line relocation. This is the actual TDOT contract, which will be reimbursing us for the cost for the design and the construction of this. When we go forward with this, at this point, Shauna is, we're trying to clarify some language, so we would probably hope to have it worked out before the board meeting, but we may need the motion at that time with concurrence by staff for the language that's in the contract itself. We have to work with TDOT on that, which sometimes is hard, as you're well aware, but we need to get this contract done.
So you need a
Yes.
motion. Okay, we move that we move this to the full board
Second.
as recommended.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
13, consideration of a revision to the Boyle Cool Springs 2 joint venture road impact offset agreement to include the signalization of the Carruthers Parkway at Corporate Center Drive intersection. Estimated cost of improvement is less than $200,000.
Simply put, why don't we just get a consensus from you tonight, if you don't mind, for staff working with Boyle to get this amendment put together and bring to the board at your next meeting, possibly with the amendment written, and go forward from that. We're working on this. We entered into the agreement originally in December, and with the expectation there'd probably be an amendment coming, and
To add the signal.
Mr. Stuckey and I are still working on that with Boyle Group, and so
Borough representative.
if you don't mind, if you just give us a consensus, I don't think it needs to be any kind of a vote necessarily right now. We'll bring the paperwork back to the board at a work session. It'd be probably the easiest thing to do.
So this will be coming back to a work session.
Yes, and you know, probably we would be asking it would come at the work session and vote the same night. And the reason for that is they already are getting ready to do the turn lane. Well, if we do this, then they have the opportunity to extend the turn lane into the next intersection, and we don't want them to get finished and then do that. So it's kind of trying to get it coordinated correctly together if we're going forward with it.
Consensus.
Consensus here.
Yes, let's do a bundle. I mean,
That was easy.
good job. Yes. Next is consideration of revisions to the Franklin Transportation and Street Technical Standards.
Almost 4 years ago, the city approved a street specs for use with the design and construction of all of our streets inside the city. Since that time, we've had numerous changes. A lot of these changes that we're looking at here, I mean, a lot of them are just, they're clerical. As we've done this, I mean, we've changed the city logo, so we're changing, that's a simple one that we're changing. But there's a handful of things that are more technically, technical standards that we're changing, and some of them are just grammatic. There was a list of a summary of the changes. If you got any questions about them, let us know. But we've talked with the design professionals group that meets regularly, presented this to them. The plan, this has to be changed by ordinance. The plan is not the next board meeting, but likely the first April meeting. We would come with an actual ordinance to make these recommendations. And, in the meantime, we'll still be accepting any suggestions on any of the proposed changes.
Unless they were grammatical changes, was there something wrong with them?
No, different standards. I'll give you an example. The ramps, handicap ramps that you see at the end of the sidewalks, we have the little detectable pavers there. We're looking at changing those out. A lot of that comes from, Joe can probably explain the maintenance on those. That they've had a lot of them that when they have a break of some type, someone drives over and breaks them, they basically have to replace the entire thing. They're looking at an easier, or a product that's easier for maintenance. That's just one example. We did find a few, mistakes where there's a detail and the text doesn't match it exactly. Things like that you expect to find in this type of document, and we're making those corrections.
No financial impact from them?
No.
Okay.
I guess I'll give you one other example. All of our asphalt sections, we're proposing going with the TDOT asphalt design. It's what we've been using on all of our road projects that we've been doing in the house, and we're looking at all the streets would use a similar asphalt. It's something that as we're being stretched more and more on when we can repave, we're looking at trying to use a mix that may last a little bit longer. So that's just another example of a change in there. So expect to see this, I guess, in about a month on the board agenda with an actual ordinance for the changes.
Okay.
Okay. You don't need an action or anything?
No.
15, street project status reports.
Any questions on any? I know we're pressed for time, so just if you got any questions on any of these reports.
16, water management project.
Same thing, if you got any questions.
17, stormwater project status reports. All right, 18, discussion regarding various Hillsborough Road, Fifth Avenue properties. Ms. Peterson.
I have requested that this be on the agenda because of the item that we had about purchasing a parcel on Fifth Avenue North, and I was requesting that we look at all of this together, not that we're going to do it tonight, but I did ask what is the difference between, well, first of all, what size is this parcel?
It's 0.7 acres.
Okay, and
The parcel that we're talking about is?
331 Fifth Avenue North.
What is it?
The one that we discussed.
The gas station, the gas station that's just south of Sonic.
Right, exactly.
Same side of the road, just south of Sonic.
It's a triangular piece of property.
You have
okay, and the other thing is, how much was it going to cost for us just to buy the right-of-way?
The right-of-way and easements, we're calculating based on the appraisals that was done would cost us $34,500 plus somewhere
And
in
I
that
guess
range.
part of my point is that, all of this stuff is flooded. And there's little of it that has come back, there's so much that still says for rent or it's just closed up. Not everything, but much of it is. And I think we just need to look at this as a whole. Again, not expecting us to do this tonight, but I mean, we're talking about needing $300,000 for some other things tonight. I mean, today, we've been talking about that. And so, I'm just concerned about us just looking at maybe one particular area. And also, this one that we've already bought, apparently there were two others that we agreed to maybe a year and a half ago to purchase, but now they wanted to stay in business and use the piece that we've already purchased as their parking, because they were going to lose their parking, weren't they? And I think that's the reason we decided to go ahead and buy, part of the reason that we decided to go ahead and purchase all of those. That would be on the other side of the street.
Correct.
There.
Correct.
But I just think, I really, my point is, I think we just need to look at this as a whole, instead of just doing one parcel at a time. And also, we're talking about, I know that the one that we did buy, I think, whenever you counted that out about how much it was like $1 million for the acre. I mean, it wouldn't cost $1 million because it wasn't $1 million, it wasn't a full acre there. But I mean, we need to kind of get some reality in here. And I also heard, but I wasn't able to find it. I said to you, I heard one of these pieces sold very recently for much less than what the appraised value for this was.
One of the parcels sold, we understand, for 100, what was it?
125.
Laundry. Yep, that's right. And so, I mean, we're talking about paying top dollar whenever somebody else with a bigger piece of property, I would assume, paid much less than this. So, I think we just need to look at it as a whole. Right. Well, no, but still.
It was at an auction, and we are required to go through the appraisal process.
Sure.
And that's what we're using for setting them
But now, won't the appraisal be changed by the result of the auction? Because wouldn't it be a comparable property?
It was auctioned before the appraisal.
Well, I'm sorry. I find that hard to believe then that they're talking about a piece of property that's a much smaller piece of property for, what, 2.5 times as much money?
It's actually a larger piece of property.
Oh, okay.
It's not all of the property that the cleaners is on. It's only one of the lots
Okay.
that was sold.
But still.
Again, the appraisal was done after the auction, is my understanding. And that's how we found out that it had sold, actually. But we're following the guidelines as established for doing appraisals. And we got appraisal and a review appraisal. So that's what we have to do.
One thing to keep in mind with that too is the right-of-way that's necessary is state right-of-way, and if we do not follow their procedures and guidelines, that just slows things down. And obviously, we don't want to slow down Hillsborough Road. So
Sure, but but we're talking about what, $34,000 as opposed to $300,000.
right. Well, and that doesn't take into consideration damages or anything else that may be associated with it. So.
Well, but it is something to think about, I think.
Yes.
That's my whole point.
Not disagreeing with
is that we need to look at all of this, but tonight, obviously, not.
I just want to comment, Alderman Peterson, I really appreciate you bringing that to light, and I think that is something, as a committee and as a board, we definitely need to take pause and make sure we are looking at these. Just because as a board, because something was offered, or we can rebuttal.
And as I say, and we might be looking at doing more than what we're just talking about here, but the thing is, I don't think we can afford to buy everything there.
Even though we have an appraisal, we're not obligated to offer.
And that's what I'm trying to get at.
We have it settled.
TDOT money. Yes.
We actually have the one piece of property has agreed to sell at $300 versus an appraised value of $310. So, that's what we have the intent to buy that we've gone to them with, and they've. So anyway, that's where we are with that particular piece of property. The others we don't have the appraisals on yet.
And here ended the meeting. We've got. we've run over, but we have a work session special work session, take 5 and come back?
So we adjourn this one?
Yes.
We'll adjourn this, take 5 and come back.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.